The day following our arrival, Mother and Father kept their promise from the previous night, and we go out to look at our new town. I'm so excited that I was practically jumping as we make our way around the town. Our home is in the eastern area of the town, and just a few minutes of walk west bring us to this town center, which is marked with a large and sparkling fountain. I had only heard people talk about fountains, as they were extremely rare and reserved for only the most highly regarded of ponies. The fact that my town has one made me even further in awe of it than I previously was. As I look around from where I am near the fountain, I soon realize that the town has a circular layout to it, everything spanning out from the fountain. While looking around, I also noticed several ponies carrying buckets, filling them up at the fountain. Noticing me staring, my father spoke up. "This fountain serves as the city's well. They use magic to bring the water up from the ground and circulate it through the water, or through the fountain, to keep it from becoming stagnant. It's quite ingenious, I think." My mother suppressed a laugh as we continued to stroll through the town. The town center also serves as the marketplace, and was lined with various stalls selling various wares. Everything from fresh fruit to weaponry was being bought and sold. If I didn't know any better, I would have never known that the world was just getting through a famine. The town, despite its location under what appeared to be a hollow mountain, was surprisingly large. In patches, daylight shone in from the holes created in the top of the mountain, and what areas were not lit by the sunlight were lit by magical lanterns. For the most part, the areas in which the sunlight shone were lush with greenery, such as gardens or parks. Only a few buildings were ever under direct sunlight. There was a fairly large clinic located a few blocks west or southwest of the fountain, and it seemed fairly busy as we passed it, but nothing extremely horrible seemed to be going on. We continued walking, about halfway between the fountain wall and the center of the city, along the road that connects the various parts of the city. It was on this road, as opposed to a road leading directly to the fountain and town center, that appeared to be the city's main road. It was heavily traveled, and many of the shops and necessities ponies needed were along it. As we approached the western wall, I noticed the road we had taken to get into the town. I wondered if it was the only entrance and exit the city had. It would be easily defendable, but also be a double-edged sword in times of war. The part of me that was fascinated by the three great tragedies couldn't help but rise to the surface. But it soon fades as we continue walking and taking in the sights. Just north of the entrance road, we passed the school I would be attending starting tomorrow. It was huge, far larger than the one I attended previously. It rose 2 floors from the ground and took up almost a whole block. It was then I realized something I had been overlooking. I looked around to confirm my own thoughts. And just as I thought, a large portion of the ponies we had been passing around were my age. Some older, some younger, but a lot of them were school-aged ponies. My mother notices me looking at them and speaks up to confirm my thoughts. "This city has a large population of children. Many families move here, like us, and have children. Their parents must be wanting to give them a fresh start, just like us." She looks at my father, and they share a smile. I roll my eyes and continue walking. A short distance later, I notice what appears to be a library, and immediately dash inside. As soon as I'm inside, I stop, my mouth hanging open as I look upon the wall-to-wall bookcases filled with books. Not only is the school bigger, but the library is too. I exclaim to myself. I'm about to run off into the world of books when my parents show up and stop me. "Come now, you'll have plenty of time to spend here later. Let's finish looking around for now," my father chuckles. I begin to open my mouth to retort, but settle for a sigh and go with my parents. They're right. I can come here any time I want. We exit the library and continue looking around the town. For the most part, the rest of the town is pretty normal. Houses make up a vast majority of it, and the north is where the city hall and the guard barracks are located. One odd thing I noticed, however, is that there are a few tunnels in the cavern walls that don't have roads leading up to them. They appear to be mines, however. They are closed off and guarded. Perhaps they do have escape tunnels, in case of siege, I thought. It isn't much longer until my parents and I return home, having seen all that the city has to offer. Thinking back on all that I saw today, I was struck by how completely different this town was compared to the town I came from, and the towns that we passed through to get here. Every Ponies here seemed upbeat and has a positive outlook, and the streets were certainly abuzz with activity. In the other towns, Ponies seemed beaten and hopeless, the weight of the great tragedies constantly on their minds, uncertainty causing them to have a bleak outlook. But here, in Vanatonem, Ponies seem almost unaffected by the great tragedy that occurred a few years ago. It was almost as if, inside this mountain, they had never happened. I, for one, was glad of this. I had my fill of the adults in my previous town acting hopeless and being depressed. Here, things seemed so much brighter, despite the lack of sunlight. The sun had begun to set, and the city was becoming extremely dark. My parents and I sat down for supper before we turned in for the night. I ate quickly and prepared myself for bed, anxious for what tomorrow would bring. A new city, a new school, and perhaps new information on the great tragedies. I crawl into my bed and anxiously wait for sleep to overcome me, anticipating the events of the following day. The following day, I get up early, quickly eat breakfast, and practically sprint to school. I could not contain my excitement as I smile broadly as I go. My first day of classes. I will get to learn more and more, perhaps even something new about the great tragedies. I rush to school, find my class, and sit expectantly in my desk. As class was beginning, time seemed to creep by slowly. I am giddy with anticipation and cannot sit still. I decide to distract myself by looking around at my classmates. They are all around my age, and the majority of them are talking to each other in small groups. Moments after I start looking around, a black-coated buck walks into the classroom, and the students break from their groups and take their seats. This must be the new teacher, I think to myself. "Good morning, class," he begins. "Today, we have a new student joining us. Feldgrau, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself." I flinch slightly at being put on the spot so soon, but get out of my desk and go to the front of the class. "Hello, everyone. My name is Feldgrau. I recently moved here with my parents. It's nice to meet you all." I look to my teacher, who nods to me. Then I go back to my seat and sit down once more. That was painful, I say to myself. I don't like dealing with other ponies that much, even less so when I'm put up in front of a group of them. I prefer the quiet tranquility that books offer, not to mention the less judgmental air books give off. I sigh to myself as my teacher begins his lecture. A few hours pass, and we take a lunch break. We covered various topics in the morning, such as the government of the mystical symposium, mathematics, and some grammar. I make my way towards the cafeteria and get my lunch. While deciding where to sit, 3 ponies wave at me. I look around and finally decide to sit with them. "You're Feld, our new student, right?" a teal-coated mare asks me. "My name's Aurora. It's nice to meet you." She smiles at me from across the table. I give a nod and reply, "Yeah, it's nice to meet you as well." A brown-coated buck sitting next to me smiles as he says, "I'm Hem, by the way. Nice to meet you." Next, a dull yellow-coated buck speaks. "And I'm Lucky. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance." I nod again before saying, "Good to meet you both as well. We, aren't in the same class, are we? I don't recall seeing any of you." The three of them shook their heads, and Aurora says, "No, we aren't. But news about new students travels fast, and the three of us are on the forefront when it comes to news about newcomers." The three of them were giving me their full attention. "This leads me to ask you the question that I ask all new students here." Suddenly, I hear hoofsteps behind me as my teacher is standing over our table. "Well, well, if it isn't our three little resident conspiracy theorists, Aurora, Hem, and Lucky. I do hope you're not filling our newest student's head full of your delusions," he says. Hem and Lucky avoided his gaze, but Aurora held it firmly. "Of course not, Mr. Hourglass. We're just getting to know him. Him being a new student and all. I'm sure you can understand that," she says to him. Mr. Hourglass closes his eyes and smiles, before opening them and stating simply, "Of course, Aurora. Feld, I'll see you in class." He turns from our table and walks away. "That was close," Hem says. "What was close?" I ask. "Oh, never mind him," says Aurora. "Say, if you'd like, we could show you around a bit after class. Show you all the nooks and crannies of the city, if you're interested." I consider this for a moment. I would like to go to the library and do some reading. However, I didn't see everything the city has to see yesterday. It might be beneficial to take her up on her offer. "Sure, that sounds good," I say. The three of them break into smiles, and Aurora exclaims, "Great! Then meet us at the fountain after school." The rest of the lunch period was rather uneventful. The four of us engaged in some small talk, namely discussing interests. However, Aurora never asked me that question that she was going to, before Mr. Hourglass interrupted. Once I was back in class, Mr. Hourglass was continuing his teachings. A few more hours drag on before he says, "Okay, now class, let's discuss history." I immediately perk up, anticipating discussion on the great tragedies. Seconds turn to minutes, and I realize that the school day is running out. Mr. Hourglass has yet to mention anything about the great tragedies yet. In fact, he seems to be glossing over them. I raise my hoof to ask him about it. "Mr. Hourglass, are we going to be discussing the great tragedies?" I inquire. He narrows his eyes as he says, "No, Feld, that is not in our curriculum. Here in Vanatonem, we believe that we should not dwell on such matters. They were dark and troubling times, far too recent to warrant teaching. We are still in the process of recovering from them, and as such we are unable to fully go into detail regarding them. It was decided that leaving them out was for the best. Now then, pay attention." I slump down on my chair in disbelief. Not in the curriculum? Too recent? My previous teacher had hammered into our minds that they were important to learn from, so we didn't repeat the same mistakes. Why would things be so radically different here? Surely even a small discussion on them would be good, right? My mind was ablaze with questions that I wasn't prepared to ask. Mr. Hourglass seemed different when I asked him, almost intimidating. I spent the rest of the school day deep in thought, and barely paid the lessons any attention. It wasn't long before the school day was over, and I was walking out the doors, defeated.